Welcome to the Waterloo Wellington Children's Groundwater Festival, our virtual festival. The focus today is on watersheds, and I think that we all have a better understanding now of how they work and where we are within the watershed. I'm still curious, though, about the Great Lakes, and today we're going to be talking with John from the University of Waterloo. So welcome, John, and thank you for joining us to share your knowledge about the Great Lakes. To start, could you introduce yourself and tell us a little about what you do at the University of Waterloo? Let our friends out there know what your role is and anything else you'd like to share about the University of Waterloo.
Hello, and thank you so much for inviting me. I work at the University of Waterloo. My name's John Johnston, and I'm a geologist or earth scientist. So I teach about geology, and especially geology in the Great Lakes, back millions of years to thousands of years to today. I also work with teams of scientists across North America trying to figure out why the lakes are going up and down, sometimes in these patterns through geologic time of years to decades to centuries to millennia. And so we study and look for clues in the beaches, in the sand, and the levels or layers of the sand to understand why it goes up and down through time.
Wow, that sounds very interesting. So maybe we can start by first telling us which lakes make up the Great Lakes.
There are 5 lakes in the Great Lakes, as shown on this image right here. I've got a few props that this neat shape of Lake Superior, the largest lake, is like this really large container right here. So if we stick this on here, we would put it way up north at the head of the system. And then we would have 2 other lakes, Lake Michigan and Lake Huron. They go north-south, or Huron's kind of like a hand type shape. And they go below Lake Superior, right here and here. And then we have 2 other lakes. We have Lake Erie and Lake Ontario, which kind of go east-west and are elongated in that way. And they go here and here. So the Great Lakes consist of 5 big lakes: Superior, Huron, Michigan, Erie, and Ontario.
Oh, great. Yeah, so now we know which of the lakes that make up the 5 Great Lakes. When we look at the Great Lakes, which way does the water flow?
Great question. We have given you a handout to actually look at and follow along with us on the direction of flow of the Great Lakes. So if you pull out your handout, we have some lakes listed in the bottom, and we have some blank areas in the top. And if you follow along in Lake Superior, way up north, in this blank right here, if you write Lake Superior, water begins here and flows down to Lake Huron, right here. And so you can add a label right here, Lake Huron. But Lake Huron and Michigan are the same level. There's a wide enough space between these lakes that water can go back and forth, and it's one lake level. And so this long and skinny lake is Lake Michigan. And then it can flow down through a river to Lake Erie here. And so if you fill this out as Lake Erie, and then over Niagara Falls, through the Niagara River down to Lake Ontario right here, and then down the St. Lawrence River all the way to the Gulf of St. Lawrence, and then to the Atlantic Ocean. So it goes all the way from Lake Superior up high down to the Atlantic Ocean through many stair steps.
Well, that's a long journey for a water drop. So we saw sort of the journey of the water, but how does water make it from Lake Superior to the Atlantic Ocean?
Oh, great question. We created another handout for you to follow along in this profile or elevation or stair steps from really high elevation to low elevation. So we're talking Lake Superior is 183 meters above the Atlantic Ocean, which is a relative 0 down here. And so if you're up high in Lake Superior, you go through a lock that helps hold up the water or release it, and go through the St. Mary's River to Lake Huron. And Lake Huron and Michigan are drawn as one here. Lake Michigan a little bit deeper and Huron a little shallower, but they're a similar level at 176 meters. So the water level from Superior to Huron and Michigan is 7 meters. In the St. Mary's River it cascades down to 176 meters. And then the water flows into Lake Erie. And the difference in elevation between Lake Huron and Lake Erie is only 3 meters down the St. Clair and Detroit River. And then from Lake Erie to Lake Ontario, it's a big fall. Across the Niagara Falls, through the Niagara River, it goes down about 100 meters, down to 76 meters above sea level. And then it takes other steps through a number of locks down to the Atlantic Ocean. So we go from 183 meters all the way down in stair steps, some of which we help to regulate and hold up the water or release the water.
Wow, that's a big journey and a big drop from the top of Lake Superior to the Atlantic Ocean. So when we look at the Great Lakes, which one do we in our watershed, in the Grand River watershed, which one do we have the most impact on?
Right. Many people think about this lake right here, this small shallow lake called Lake Erie, which has been in the news quite a bit because of the algae blooms or the green looking tinge of the lake, which sometimes impacts life and fish and is not good. And that is washed in from a lot of the agricultural practices surrounding the lake and in the watershed. So that's pretty important and impacted quite a bit. But let me turn your attention to Lake Ontario. We have a lot of big cities in Canada and the US beside this lake. And we also have at the end of the system a whole bunch of locks holding Lake Ontario up so that water is sometimes released and sometimes held in the lake. And so we've created a level lake, which isn't always good for the wetlands to be healthy. They need that natural oscillation. So we regulate those locks to allow those natural oscillations to keep all the wetlands around Lake Ontario healthy.
Oh, that's interesting. Thank you. So which of the lakes, Lake Erie or Lake Ontario, which one's bigger? Because it's hard to tell when you look at them.
Ooh, the great way to look at this is in your image right here. If you were to look at Lake Erie, it's really shallow. Lake Ontario, really deep. But let's look at our containers and have a little fun. So we have Lake Erie and Lake Ontario. If I were to turn them to the side and keep them level, see how Lake Ontario is deeper. It's about 3 to 4 times deeper than Lake Erie. So the volume of Ontario is bigger and it's deeper than Lake Erie, the shallowest lake in the Great Lakes.
So I'm curious, how long would it take a water drop to get from Lake Superior to Lake Ontario through the journey that you just described?
That's a great question. And the journey may vary. It may take different pathways. But generally, the shortest way through from Superior to the Atlantic Ocean is decades. So 20, 40 years. But it could take as long as centuries, hundreds of years. Let me explain. Lake Superior can hold a water droplet for up to 200 years. And then when it releases it to Lake Huron could keep it for about 20 years, 25 years. But if it goes over to Lake Michigan, it could hold a water droplet for about 100 years. But if it makes its way down to Lake Erie, the really shallow lake of the Great Lakes, it only stays in there years, about 3 to 5 years. Whereas Lake Ontario, the little deeper lake and a little bit bigger than Erie, holds it for about 6 to 8 years. And so they hold water and transfer water a little bit differently, but it could take anywhere from 20 to 40 years to hundreds of years to make it to the ocean.
So each water drop is individual and has an individual journey. Thank you. So the last question I'm curious about, which one is your favorite lake and why is it your favorite lake?
Let me pull off my favorite lake right here. Lake Superior. It is the mightiest, deepest. You could take the CN Tower and put it in Lake Superior, and it's about 400 meters. So just the top of the CN Tower would stick out the top. It's so deep. It's also a really neat shape that if you look at the shape, it's like a wolf's head and the mouth right here. And it's the most rugged and northern lake. So there's not many people up there, and it's beautiful to go up and visit. And also, it's really nice to research because it's the most unknown lake of all.
Still has some questions without answers for it.
Yes, a lot.
Yes. Well, thank you today for joining us and telling us a little bit more about Great Lakes. Is there anything else you'd like to share before we say goodbye to our friends?
No, I want to thank you so much for inviting me. The Great Lakes are so great. Everybody knows about them around the world, even astronauts seeing them from space and recognizing where they are on Earth, seeing the Great Lakes, a great freshwater resource.
Thank you. Well, we encourage our friends to get out there, especially as the weather's getting nicer, and explore our closest Great Lake in Lake Erie. But if you have the chance to travel further to Lake Ontario, Lake Huron, Lake Superior, which is your favorite, I encourage you to do that. So thank you so much, John, for your time and for sharing your knowledge with us today.
You are welcome.